Greetings, writers. It's Mr. Hebda from the Lackawanna College Writing Center here with part 5 in our series on pronoun agreement, pronouns and person. So what are personal pronouns? Well, pretty much personal pronouns are words that usually stand for people. And they're important to keep in mind for your writing because they convey a sense of emotional distance between the reader and the writer. And this is divided into 3 different groups based on that sense of distance. So that's where we get our first person, third person, second person, and third person from, based on the degrees of distance. So feel free to pause the video at any moment if you want to study charts like the one I have on the right. I'll have a few more coming up. Let's get started with first person. So first person pronouns are emotionally the closest to the reader. So they convey a lot of the writer's emotions to the reader, and this gives them a kind of informal, subjective quality to them, which is generally not appropriate for college-level writing, but you might see it in reflection essays or journals. It's definitely an email. But always check with your instructor to see if it's okay to use this kind of writing in an assignment, because you might lose points if you use it where it's not appropriate. Let's spend some time talking about second person, because second person can be pretty thorny. It's pretty much variations of the word you, right? This is, again, very close emotionally to the reader, and again gives that kind of informal and subjective quality that is not appropriate for college-level writing. The only places that you'll really be using you in college writing is in email and maybe some discussion boards on Canvas. Definitely not in essays. You don't want to be using you in essays. And even outside the classroom, I want you to be aware that use of second person can be perceived by your audience, by your listeners or your readers, as being what's called accusatory. And that word is related to our word accusation because it sounds like you're being yelled at. You've probably been on the receiving end of this kind of language before when someone says, you know, why did you do that, or you should do this. And it can sound very harmful and hurtful to the audience, and you don't want to hurt your audience. You don't want to hurt your reader. So please be careful with how you use second person or avoid it altogether. Now, third person pronouns are the most distant emotionally from the reader. And this is great because it gives a sense of formality or objectivity that comes out of this kind of lack of emotion, which produces a sense of being impartial. It feels impartial. It feels less biased. And this is really good for college-level writing. You'll see it also in the research that you'll use to inform your writing, your papers. So you may want to study that chart I have on the right. I've got the subject forms of the third-person pronouns in the top row of white boxes and the object form in the bottom row. Now, to help you understand why we like third person in college-level writing, I like to use this analogy, right? You wouldn't go to a job interview in your pajamas, right? No, you'd take the extra effort and you dress up, right? Like I have this little tie here. Similarly, when you're writing a college-level paper, you want to take that extra effort and dress it up with third-person language. So let me give you some tips on how to do that. I know it can be tough to shift from first and second person to third person. So if you follow this general rule, you should be pretty clear. Replace first and second person pronouns with specific nouns. So check out this example. I get a lot of student writing like this. When you look into it, the case for drug addiction as a disease is pretty strong. And that's not a bad sentence. It's making an argument, making a claim. We want that in college level writing. But the problem is that it sounds informal. It sounds like we're having a conversation, right? And it shouldn't be a conversation. It should sound a little more elevated. As you can see, the words in purple are the ones that are the language that sounds a little more conversational. And then we've got our problem pronouns in blue. You can't have that. And it here is an example of pronoun confusion. We don't know what it's supposed to stand for. So instead of having that first sentence, try to write sentences a little more like the second one. When a researcher studies recent findings, the case for drug addiction as a disease is strong. So here in red, I've shown that our pronouns have been replaced, right? We've changed you to a researcher. Now it's really clear. And we don't have that second person informality going on. And that confusion's been cleared up by putting recent findings in. We know exactly what it's supposed to stand for. Notice we also dropped pretty, because pretty can sound quite informal, and study sounds a little more elevated than look into. So it's something that it takes a while to get practice with it, but it's something to shoot for. So try to shoot more for those second sentences. All right, great work today, writers. Be sure to check out the Lackawanna College Writing Center YouTube channel for more helpful videos. And as always, feel free to make an appointment at the Writing Center. We're always here to see you succeed. Keep up the great writing. Mr. Hebda out.